Hey guys, welcome into the Bear With Us podcast. I'm Jack. He is Frank. Frank, we weren't quite sure when we were initially recording if we were going to bother doing the post reaction, the post game reaction show, but Justin Fields ended up playing. Unfortunately, it was not enough. The Bears fall to the Packers at home, 28-19. The Packers go to 5-8. Bears fall to 3-10. So let's just get right into it, Frank. Let's have a real raw conversation because, a lot of it this week was, well, should the Bears win, right? Like, is it better for the Bears to learn, to win, to this and that and this and that? I think it was a little exaggerated, and we kind of forgot maybe the Bears aren't one player away from being truly competitive with slightly better teams. Let's start with the positives. I think it's always great to start with positives, especially in a loss. And here's the thing. Just talking with you, Frank, I don't really think you or I are really all that upset after this loss.
No.
There's some things that we're questioning, absolutely. But it's definitely not, if you're coming on here, if you're listening to our podcast, hoping that Frank and I will just eviscerate this team, I think you're on the wrong podcast. But Frank, what are some positives that you took away from this game?
Justin Fields is really good at football, and it was
just stop right there.
That's
good,
it.
Right?
All right, thanks for listening, everybody. Like, share, subscribe. But no, in all honesty, like, you can tell that he put an emphasis on not running as much, and even to a point where, like, he was getting through his progressions really fast, which is a good thing. Maybe that injury was like, a blessing in disguise, because he was getting through his reads and his progressions. And he was making really good throws, and we'll get to the 2 interceptions later. But overall, really good game for him. What did he end with? 247, 250? I mean, he had people worries, can he throw over 200 yards? So that, excuse is thrown out the window, or that sort of talking point. The offensive line, Jack, I know the Packers don't have a daunting pass rush by any means, but we've played other teams that don't have one. Leatherwood looked really good. I mean, we may have something that you're going to have to do something, because Borum hasn't been good at right tackle, and he looked solid. I mean, I had no complaints with the offensive line, including Mustipher today. Like, they played very well. I think last thing for me offensively is Darrynton Evans looks pretty good. I was sort of going through, my brain. I feel like I do this every week with Montgomery, where I'm like, you know what? Maybe it's not the worst if we re-sign him. Give him like $8 million a year, $7 million a year. Give him a little raise, get him out there. And then, like, Darrynton Evans just breaks off a 20-yard run, and I'm like, we shouldn't pay a running back. Like, this guy got this.
you're like, never mind.
Yeah, no, it's I sort of go back and forth internally, but he looked really good. Yeah, before we get to, there's some things defensively that I had to. Did you have anything on the offense, some positives?
I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head when it comes to, pretty much everything that I was looking for and was really excited about. Justin Fields, man, he just makes some of these throws. And, I do want to touch on the interceptions, because I would obviously argue, put those in the negative category, especially with how both of them sort of ended the game. I can't really even be all that upset about it, just because, again, you really see the lack of weapons this team has. I will say I was a little disappointed that they weren't kind of force-feeding Clay, at least giving Claypool a chance. Like, the decisions in terms of personnel they were using, didn't love at the end of the game. And I'll save the rest of the negatives because I was the one who brought up the positive. So, yeah, I thought the offensive line overall just had a really, really solid game. I mean, Justin Fields had time to throw. Like, we've been kind of like, oh, man, we watched that was not the same offensive line who played in New York, right? Again, like you said, the Packers don't obviously have all of their pieces, but, I mean, we've seen this Bears offensive line look bad against pretty much everybody. So it was nice to see them sort of bounce back from a really rough game last week. And really, I thought played very well. I agree with you, though. I thought Justin Fields played a lot smarter today. Again, last couple throws of the game, you could argue probably not the best decisions, but overall, he was keeping them in it. And just really can't be mad at that.
But you know what, Jack? If we can isolate Fields here for a second without talking the interceptions again, we'll get to those. Because I'm just sort of thinking every single week that we see this kid, I'm like, what box hasn't he checked yet? Remember the big thing for us was don't take unnecessary hits. He's starting to do less of that. And it was step up into the pocket sometimes and don't just go around, even though he's elite at that sort of spin move that he does to get outside. And he stepped up in the pocket, made a really good throw to Kmet today.
He was gonna run too, and then the vision is I texted you. It's improved.
Again, for me, and this may not come this year because the team isn't good, but I would like to see him put together a game-winning drive. Now, granted, there were times this year where it just was not his fault. Those 2 interceptions today were. But like you think of the Minnesota game where there was a fumble, the drop pass by EQ. I forgot who that was on 4th. And like he's had other opportunities, but that's one where I would like to see. But again, it's like he's checking off so many fucking boxes, dude. Like he's progressing so well, man. It's been awesome to see.
Frank, look, I'm sorry. If your biggest concern at this point of the season is if Justin Fields can't close out games, you're looking at this all wrong. Like, what is it frustrating that he can't? Or not that he can't, that he hasn't yet, that they haven't gone down the field and won a game? Sure, I would say that's probably the last sort of big thing you really want to see. But I'm sorry. I don't know how you watch this game and what he was able to do, both, and let's be very clear here, Frank, both running the football and throwing the football. Mm-hmm. He was dropping some fucking dimes today.
Yeah.
And you can't tell me that you're concerned that they can't go down and win. The Bears don't have Christian Watson. Like this dude is unreal. Like I will fully admit that I guess I shouldn't say we were wrong about him. But he's just come on so fucking quick. Like he had a really rough start to the season.
Well, we had said he had the highest ceiling of any receiver in the draft.
Yes.
We just also thought he had a low floor, which is not a negative thing at all. Yeah. But because he just seemed like he was a little bit more of a raw prospect at receiver, but he is super fucking athletic. Like he's putting it together like we thought he had the ability to.
I will say the scariest moment of the game for me was Chase Claypool obviously getting hurt with that, or not hurt, but he sort of slid down again the Soldier Field grass. It always makes you a little nervous.
I still don't think he fumbled that. I think he was down.
Refs were weird today. They're making some just odd decisions. But, Aaron Rodgers, man, shut the fuck up. Stop looking for fucking flags every time you miss a throw.
He was complaining a lot today.
Dude, he was making some terrible fucking throws. He's clearly hurt with the thumb injury. Like, he could not make the throws we're used to him doing. But, man, he was acting like a little bit. And listen, Bears fans, I know it sucks. That guy comes into this town again and wins, especially after the comments he made. I know it sucks, but let's be real. If they win today, does that really excuse the entire past history of Aaron Rodgers owning this team?
Yeah, and that was that Fox tried to make the presentation of like after the 2-point conversion, like zoom in on him and it's like, dude, both of us suck this year. Like both teams are bad. Like
it's Jerry Alexander gets burned by EQ, and then at the end of the game, he's like doing his. I'm like.
Yeah, and it's like it didn't have, and it was funny because we know quite a few Packers fans, and we're texting, and they're just like, yeah, like we won. It doesn't even have this means nothing for either team. Like this is a boring. The game itself was entertaining, but like the narrative just isn't there. Because at least if one team is in contention, it's like the bad blood. You get to knock them out of the playoffs, or you have something to latch on to. It was nothing. We're both teams are dead in the water. Like there's not so that the angle that Fox tried to do just was. It was played. It was stupid.
I think we've danced around it a little bit at this point, Frank. I think it's safe to talk about. Oh, actually, hold on. Before we do, on the defensive side, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's talk defense.
Jack Sanborn,
dude,
can play. I don't know what he'll be in the future. I don't know if he'll ever be better than like a Nick Kwiatkowski type linebacker who's just really good at kind of reading and reacting. But the kid can play. I mean,
I feel like he's a what is the right word? Like I think people looked at what he was on paper in terms of numbers, his 40 speed, and he doesn't play like whatever his 40 was, because they always kept saying he's not fast. Look at the way he's chasing people down. Like, there has yet to be a situation that it looked like, like Nick Kwiatkowski looked slow with the Bears and with the Raiders, but he had a really high IQ. He sort of knew how to read defenses, and he could hit gaps, or at least guess correctly sometimes. So he'd make some plays. Sanborn does not. He's not guessing. He's reacting, and he's a quick twitch guy. Like, maybe he doesn't have straight line speed, but this isn't a 40 contest. Like, he's like the anti-beneficiary of just that. Like, he didn't have the 4.4 speed that we needed it for an inside linebacker. And it's like, but look at his game film, because he does not play slow, dude, like whatsoever. And it's going to get to a point, Jack, where we have to start shifting the expectation with him of like, he's good for an undrafted guy, to like, he's a good linebacker. Yeah. Like he's raised the bar for himself. Again, I stand on the statement that he should be the uncontested middle linebacker next year. There's no point in investing in that position, because you got an undrafted guy for cheap. You reel him out there again. And if he regresses, then you look at the next offseason, we have so many holes that, you just have to plug him in. But he has a real shot the rest of this season and next season to be the guy in the middle.
He's a guy who just keeps popping up. Like, every time you're watching, you're like, God damn, is that Sanborn again? And that was one of the plays that we were talking about where Aaron Rodgers is looking for a flag. At the end of that game, I mean, he made an incredible play in coverage, and there was absolutely no pass interference on that play. It was just a really damn good coverage.
I mean, there was a little bit, a little bit of a hand on the hip, but the one thing I will give the refs credit for is, for the most part, they let both teams' corners and linebackers be a little handsy in the passing game. Because, I mean, Jalen Johnson, he got called for a hold, but he was doing his thing, on whoever he was guarding throughout the game. So, and the Packers did the same. Jair Alexander was getting his hands on people too. Like, that's good defense on both sides. I like that. Don't be so ticky-tack with calls on corners. Let them, or even linebackers in coverage, let them get a little handsy.
Yeah, speaking of the secondary, I thought this game was going to be a lot worse than it ended up being. Obviously the game sort of got away from the Bears at the end, but I mean, hell, the Bears were in this game for 3 quarters, and obviously the fourth quarter happened. But I was very surprised by the Bears secondary. The only thing that kind of sucks, Frank, is I don't know how much of that is going to carry over to next season, even like next game, like obviously the bye week's coming up. I don't know how much of that we'll see from Jalen Jones. That was, I mean, easily his best game of the year. Like he actually looked like he belonged for the first time this season, honestly. And a couple tough flags at the end, a couple dumb penalties, but that's what bad teams do. And the Packers, I don't really get what has happened to their offense, because they still have some pretty good players. Not just Christian Watson, who looks like an absolute stud right now. Like Allen Lazard is a solid player. Randall Cobb still, he got targeted a couple times, but
they also have Robert Tonyan, who just is like ghosted this season. He had a really good year last year.
Yes, and the Bears have sort of just they were able to keep up, which was very, very surprising, even with Aaron Rodgers making some really piss poor throws. I thought that was pretty interesting as well, because he wasn't having those open windows that I'm sure he's probably fucking used to with the Bears. But hey, Jalen Johnson, again, I think that one game was probably an outlier. He must have been hurt or something, because he just looked abnormally bad in that game, where we were just like, man, what the hell is going on here?
He still hasn't hit that like elite threshold.
Shut down, corner one type shit.
Yeah. So you hope to get that, but he's had a better last couple of weeks for sure.
That's enough of the rosaries. Jack? Yeah, that's enough of the rosaries. The pass rush, again, just nothing there. And again, Rodgers is always kind of, he's always had time to throw, and he's always been really good about that. But it makes it even easier when he doesn't have to worry about being flush from the pocket every fucking third down. Like, it's just so bad. And the penalties, I mean, obviously that should be a negative. They absolutely killed this team at the end of the game. It can't happen. But other than that, defensively, were there any other negatives for you, Frank?
I I don't think so. The one touchdown to Christian Watson, I don't know who that safety was, but I would think that Eddie Jackson and or Jaquan Brisker make a much better play on that. I don't remember who it was, but that was an awful. Oh, I mean, he like never got his head turned around, and then he like let Watson get like 5 yards away from him before he even reacted. That was awful.
Yeah.
That was probably the only other negative thing that I can think of. But Jack, I think offensively, again, we'll get to the Justin Fields interceptions, but there's no like deep dive there. They were just bad throws. So it is what it is. Luke Getsy is a domestic terrorist. Let's just fucking call it what it is. This guy needs to be on a CIA watch list because I don't understand what the fuck he does sometimes. First of all, the Wildcat should never be called again. Has that resulted in any positive play this year?
I was just gonna say.
The best gain we've probably gotten out of that formation this whole season is like a 3-yard run. There's no shot. We do nothing out of that formation. And then for him, I forget what the penalty was, but it's first and goal on the 20. Yep. And this guy fucking runs the ball twice in a row.
Yeah. Like a toss play from the shotgun on 2nd and goal from the 20-yard line.
Yeah.
It's what we talked about last week, where it's like every second down, he's running the fucking football, and it's like, what the hell is going on?
It's really weird, especially in the red zone, Jack, when you have two guys who are go up and get it type of players, and Cole Kmet is becoming that third guy, and the two that I'm referencing are N'Keal Harry and Chase Claypool, and it's like. These guys are big body box out receivers. You're inside the 20. Give them a fucking chance. Do some goal line fade, or even if you just see them in single coverage, just let Justin throw the ball up to them and let them try to make a play. But instead, you're running the ball. And the first down run, okay, I get it, because if you get 5 or 10, that gets you in a better position. And then at that point, you're talking about is this 4-down territory. But then you run the ball again on 2nd down and lose yardage, and now you just have to play for the field goal. The whole second half, he was calling plays as if we were okay with field goals. And then, of course, Cairo Santos fucking gets his field goal blocked. And it's like, that's why you don't play for field goals. Because not to mention, for as injured as Aaron Rodgers is, he's still fucking Aaron Rodgers. You don't beat this guy with field goals. I mean, if we could beat him with field goals, we'd be undefeated against this fucking guy in his career.
And Cairo Santos had just missed an extra point earlier that game.
Yeah, and you know what, though? Really quick on Cairo. I know he hasn't had the best season. It was really windy out there today. I'm reserving any sort of judge. It's even the one
Soldier
that he
Field. It's Soldier Field.
The one that he made, he had to kick it to the left post, and it like barely snuck in on the right post. So as soon as I saw that early in the game, I was like, yeah, this is going to be ugly. But that's a tell right there. That's a fucking tell right there to your coaching staff. Why are you settling for field goals?
So, Frank, I'm going to be honest with you. This was the biggest. We haven't had a lot of question marks for the overall coaching staff this whole season because it is what it is. How do you judge sort of what this staff is, what they can do with the talent levels, the injuries, all of that good stuff? Sure, we've had our questions about Luke Getsy, but hell, man, he was still putting up 30 points a game left and right. So it's sort of like, a little is forgiven. This second half of this game was completely inexcusable, unless we find out in a documentary 10 years from now that the Bear, like Ryan Poles called down to Matt Eberflus and was like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Come on. What are we playing here for? I'm kidding. It obviously did not happen. But just the decision making by all parties in the second half is completely inexcusable. You have that catch by N'Keal Harry. That, first of all, the throw was incredible. The catch was great too. Why the fuck was he sitting for 3 straight weeks?
We've asked that because who else is on this receiving core that's better than him?
Like leaps and bounds better than him? Sure, probably Mooney and Claypool. They're going to be active anyways.
Well,
but
right. But I meant outside of them.
The other guys. Absolutely.
Dante Pettis? No.
I just, Frank, I don't understand why you have Velus Jones a kick returner. And then you have to waste another wide receiver spot for Dante Pettis to be your punt returner. Like, it's just that's a waste. It's just stupid, especially when N'Keal Harry is making catches like that. And we had seen him getting marginally better when he was active. and then they fucking make him in it. I have a lot of questions, and man, Justin Fields makes some really great plays. You get down to the goal line, and then you run the Wildcat. You take the ball out of his hand. Luke Getsy, this was his worst game, probably since early, week 3 of the season.
I agree. It was bad. But I will say this, though, Jack, and I don't think this is me looking for silver linings. It's just me more of like analyzing what's happening this season. This, for me, is the best case scenario for Justin Fields' progression. Because the one thing that we could have gotten with Luke Getsy, which no one would have batted an eye towards at all. I'm not saying we wouldn't want this, but if he was a Kyle Shanahan type of play caller, clearly Justin Fields is the product of him versus the opposite way. We may have gotten some fool's gold there, but the one thing that Luke Getsy has done for the most part this season has been just a common sense play caller. He's drawn up some plays to get people wide open sometimes, absolutely. But for the most part, he's doing some common sense stuff. He's leaning on the run game, play action fakes, and then he started leaning on Justin's legs because that's a huge weapon. And then, we're sort of progressing into, letting him get through reads, but nothing is groundbreaking. That to me, and let me finish and say the fact that Justin is doing what he's doing with just sort of a baseline type of OC, that's incredible. That's a huge win, because now to me, we don't have to worry about, if Luke Getsy leaves, whether because he's fired or because he does get a head coaching job in a year or two, oh my God, is Justin going to be able to survive? He can play in any offense. He's getting that sort of experience and he's getting that sort of feel for the game that he's going to do whatever. Now, obviously, now that he sort of has these reps and this experience, you want to couple him with a really, really good play caller. But the fact that it didn't happen in year 1 of this regime is not the worst thing at all. But to your point, this game was awful. I mean, Luke Getsy it was negligence in the second half what he was doing in the red zone.
I don't think there's any concern for at least this year that Luke Getsy will be gone. I'd be shocked at this point if he isn't the offensive coordinator next year. But I'm just I'm a little concerned about this coaching staff overall. They seem to like to play it safe. It feels very samey. It feels very samey in terms of what we've seen in the past. It doesn't really seem innovative, which, that's fine, I guess, only because you have the quarterback now. You have the guy have the superstar player who can make things happen out of nothing. That touchdown run where you just broke that dude's ankles and then just sprinted away. That's unreal. That's unreal stuff. And then you saw the arm too. I just hate how Luke Getsy, I almost wish you could get part of Nagy with Luke Getsy, where it's Nagy, I feel like if Justin had been making those throws, right? Because he always talked about being the, I'm the rhythm guy. I just start to get into a groove. And if he sees something working, he typically stuck with it. I just don't like taking the ball out of Justin Fields' hand. Let your receivers make some plays. Of course, when he tried to, Equanimeous St. Brown just didn't come back to the ball. He just, I don't know what that route was. It was really, really bad for him. But not a great decision by Fields, but help the guy out a little bit.
Let's talk about that first pick, because to me that was 80% Justin, 20%, maybe 70-30. But I think it was more on Justin because the placement of the throw I thought was bad. But when you watch the replay, how slow EQ got out of that break. This is some of the things that we've talked about when it comes to, Justin needing better weapons, because not only was he slow out of his break, he didn't move forward towards the ball. He let Jaire Alexander cut him off. You have to move up on that route. You have to fight for the ball. That said, where Justin messed up was, one, he couldn't really anticipate it because the break was so that's a timing route first. So that from that aspect, that's 50-50 on both of them. But Justin's got to throw that to his left shoulder and not his right, because from the angle that Jaire was coming at, you have to at least throw it away from him where it's not going to go right into his hands and he has to make a diving, pass breakup. So that portion was what it was. The second one was just him being aggressive and throwing in triple coverage. There's nothing to analyze. If the game was over, it is what he was going to have to take a shot to the end zone eventually. I'm not really worried about that. It's not like the game was in reach. We were down 9.
Yeah, and obviously, I thought Cole Kmet played pretty well, for what he was
Agreed.
given. I think what the frustrating thing, Frank, is like the Bears' offense really wasn't on the field as much today, just because they were making such big plays, and then they either score quickly or kick a field goal, and then the Packers obviously would take their time, but this is a tough one because the loss isn't what has me concerned, right? Stay at the number 2 spot, arguably best for the franchise moving forward, as opposed to getting a win that really doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. Defense, I guess you could say, is really the prime reason they lost today. But I'm going to be honest with Frank, the coaching staff, their performance today is what has me concerned, because it's something that we've sort of seen little bits of. You go back to that Patriots game where, again, it's the worst thing that they didn't drop 40 on the Patriots. They still obviously won the game. That's great. But that was sort of the first time I had questions about Matt Eberflus.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, is that who he's going to be? The second half to score 3 points in the second half when you played so well in the first half, that I just it's so weird to me. Like, I know people are going to be like, well, they're just tanking. They're playing for the loss. And like, normally I'd be like, nah, come on. Like, but this is one of those times where it's like, how can you defend what they did in the second half? Can you confidently say that they were like, yeah, they weren't trying to lose?
I don't know if you can or you can't. Because I legitimately don't think coaches are playing to lose. They're not calling plays to lose. And that's what's frustrating with Luke Getsy. But to your overall point, that, it's early in this tenure. So, take things for what you will. But that's a red flag for me right now with this coaching staff. For all of the good that they've done and the development that we've seen from Justin Fields, they're 3-9, 3-10 now. Why aren't you just pulling out all stops and just being aggressive? Because what is the difference between losing to the Packers by 9 in a game that was close the whole time, or losing to them by 25 because Justin threw an extra pick in an attempt to be more aggressive with this offense and the red zone? A loss is a loss, dude. Like, it's and to be quite honest with you, that's where the red zone play calling gets me even more annoyed. Is either you don't trust Fields in these situations, or you don't trust the receivers, or it's a mix of both. But regardless, you're never going to know what you have unless you actually do it in game. Like, Justin can't learn from a pick that he doesn't throw, because if you're just if you're running the ball on 1st and goal at the 25. That's the more annoying part, is like, I don't know if they're shielding him from any sort of potential criticism. Who fucking cares, dude? We've seen young quarterbacks get grilled throughout their careers and be just fine. He will be fine. Like, maybe this is, I'm just speculating as to why they would do that, but it doesn't make sense to me. Why you're not just,
you're not going to phase him with anything.
No, you're not. But the thing is like, it's, you had hit the nail on the head earlier when you're like, he makes 2 or 3 good throws, and then here's the Wildcat. He gets us to the red zone, and then we run the ball 3 straight times. Like, but leave it in his hands.
Yeah.
You can't say he's your guy. And I'm not going back to do they think we were never on that train where they don't really believe in him. They always believed in him. But just from a play calling standpoint, you can't treat him like the Ferrari that he is from 20 to 20 and then act like he's a broken down Toyota once we get to the red zone. He's still that same Ferrari, man. Get him the fuck out there. Let him make plays.
And that kind of seems to be like a common theme for the overall offense. Like, and we've kind of seen it all season, they move the ball very well between the 20s. And then as soon as they get in that red zone, it's like Luke Getsy just forgets how to get creative or just be a good play caller. Like, he just loves to run the ball. Like, and this is sort of where I'm getting a little bit concerned with, is there a potential disconnect between the front office and the coaching staff? Because I just don't understand how we haven't seen a single fade to Chase Claypool in the red zone. What is going on?
Or Harry or Kmet.
Why did you give up potentially the 33rd overall pick? Because I mentioned this on our podcast and I completely forgot. I said 34th. There's only 31 first-round picks.
Yep.
So now you gave up potentially an almost basically a first round pick for a guy that you're not that first throw where Justin just threw it sideways to Chase Claypool for like basically just a screen without a screener. What the hell was that?
Well, and they did it 2 more times. They did it a total of 3 times this game.
Luke Getsy has me a little bit concerned. I'm not gonna lie to you. He calls some really good. He has some really good play designs, and he has some really good play calls. I'm not gonna say he's terrible, but he just does these things during games where it's like, what are we? Has a bubble screen for this offense ever worked? I'm not saying it doesn't work for other teams, but
does it work for other teams? It's just not a successful play call just in general.
I hate it. It's my least favorite, that and obviously second down runs. I can't stand second down runs. There's just something about it that just bothers me. Like I know you don't want to get predictable and just pass every second down, but like it I don't know, man. I have questions about Getsy. It's really he just doesn't seem to change what he does. He doesn't seem to adjust what he's doing. And it's kind of frustrating, honestly. Like in game, he does. I will say that in game, he does adjust to things that maybe work a little bit better. But from week to week, you almost see the same play calls every week, and it's like, dude, come on. Are we watching the same thing?
I know what you mean. Yeah, but again, that's why just the progression in a baseline offense for Justin Fields is so encouraging. Not just because we have our guy, but because if we don't feel like Luke Getsy is the guy, not only does that position become even more attractive to a potential better play caller, but again, I mean, it's like to a degree, Justin Fields is immune to an OC because he can just do anything on a football field. He's just better than people. Like, so that's just what I was thinking of the whole second half is like, if Luke Getsy just isn't the guy or he has to relinquish play calling at some point this year or next year, I'm not as concerned with it. It's not hitting us like the Nagy Mitch Trubisky days where it's like you clearly needed an elite play caller that we thought we had with that offense, with that quarterback. We don't need that with Justin Fields. We just need we need Getsy to get his head out of his ass and just continue to just do more common sense shit and not get too cute. But even if we just have that, we're in good hands.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves and say that this coaching staff can't be the answer moving forward. Or like I'm already out on them just overall. Because I don't think that's the case. I don't think we need to be there at this point. I would love to see sort of what year 2 is going to look like, right? Who's going to be the personnel? Who are the receivers? Who are the running backs? What's the offensive line going to look like in year 2? And then what can sort of Getsy layer this offense with? Is this what it is? Is this just his offense moving forward? Because I would be concerned about that. I'd love to see a little more intricacy, some challenging things. We as much as we made fun of Matt Nagy, in terms of what he was able to do with personnel, how much of the playbook he couldn't use. Again, who really knows? But I think that's pretty believable with just the cast that he had to work with. And it's really not much better right now for the Bears where they're at. So, once they get better players, can Luke Getsy do a little bit more? Can he be a little more consistent? That being said, cut it the fuck out with taking the ball out of Justin Fields' hands. Stop.
Agreed. And to sort of, and this is really my last point, to piggyback off of what you're saying, we are not out on this coaching staff at all. I think it was the same conversation that we were having with Justin Fields early on with the things that we needed him to see, and it sounded like we were being critical of him, but we weren't. This is the same thing with the coaching staff. I think we're at the age now as Bears fans where we've seen enough coaching staffs, we've seen enough quarterbacks that we know what we want to see, especially early on, and like we know what red flags are. That doesn't mean things can't change. That doesn't mean that things can't get better. But when we see things now, we're not just in fucking la la land where it's like maybe Dick Duran is pretty fucking, like we're not kids anymore. Like we're recognizing things early. Like I guarantee if we were to go back and watch like early Lovie Smith, like the tenure of him, we'd feel the same exact way. He went 5-11 his first year, and he was always a very conservative coach. You know what I mean? So it's like, I guarantee we'd went back and be like, man, that doesn't mean this can't be a successful regime, but that will wind up biting you in the ass in big game situations. Like we have a lot of resources, Jack. We have a lot of money. We have a lot of draft picks. Let's say we build a really good roster and we're ready to compete. That mindset will still fuck you in the end. It just is what it is, and that's what I don't want.
Yeah, especially because you don't need to be conservative. When you have a superstar quarterback like who can make plays, make things happen, and Frank, I guess we can kind of say, I'll say last two things, and then we can probably get out of here. At the beginning of the year, maybe week 2, week 3, because the offense was sort of still stalling a little bit, and what we were asking for was sort of the development of Jalen Hurts, right? That was kind of the trajectory we were kind of hoping Justin Fields. I mean, that's happening. That's what's happening right now. He may even be a better runner than Jalen Hurts right now. I would argue he probably is.
Jack, I think he's the best runner at quarterback in the league. I don't think anyone, like this year in particular, anyone's close to him, I don't think. And
you watch, literally just watch some of those throws from today that he was making to I'm talking about Jalen Hurts, to AJ Brown.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if they can get on AJ Brown, right? But I'm sure Jalen Hurts loves having AJ Brown making all those fucking plays. Like that's what needs to start happening, right? And this is kind of the last thing I'll say about the coaching staff and front office. We are starting to see some examples of things that they are both doing, front office and coaching staff, that I think we're going to be able to judge sort of how this first season has gone a lot quicker than I think you and I both initially thought. Giving up you had 2 draft picks, giving up yours versus the Ravens pick for Chase Claypool, how is that going to look, right? It's still way too early to tell, right? How will that look moving forward? Some of the personnel decisions, like if in year 2, year 3 of this whole thing, right? If the only good thing that's come out of this is Justin Fields, they didn't draft Justin Fields, Frank. So you have to be willing to make changes quickly and what's going to be. I know that sounds way worse than I mean it to. Like, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying if you came out as a Bears fan, if you came out of today with questions about the coaching staff, I don't blame you. That timeout that Matt Eberflus called at the end of the game when it's fourth down, or not the end of the game, at the end of the half, when it's fourth down, what are you doing? Why? What do you do? What are you doing? What are you doing?
It was bad.
Again, I think this was just the coaching staff's worst day.
It was, but that's the other thing. As harsh as we've been today, they're all first time coaches in these positions. It's the first time DC, it's the first time head coach, first time OC. And I'm not exactly sure what the position coaches, what their experience is. Usually they have some under their belt, but shit like that's going to happen. So again, it's not us saying this is what it is and we're out on these guys. There needs to be improvement. There has to be. Because again, even if Poles builds this roster, if he hits on every draft pick next year and we make some splashes in free agency and we look like the Eagles this year where we take that step with a third-year quarterback, it's gonna shoot you in the foot eventually. Whether it's a big game in the playoffs, or if you get to the Super Bowl, like you don't win playing conservative. You just don't. Like I can't think off the top of my head anyway, a Super Bowl winner who had a conservative play caller and just conservative timeouts. I mean, just everything that's been happening. And that's just the overarching thing for me right now. Again, is we're 3-10. Start throwing the kitchen sink out there. Doesn't matter if we lose by 20 or by 7. It does not matter. And if we catch a win or two in the process, that also doesn't matter. We have our quarterback. I don't care. So winning for him, if he puts together a game-winning drive this year, that's a fucking good thing. That means more than 5 draft spots up. That means more than being at number 2 than number 7. I don't fucking care. That's good for him. That's good for his development. So if they're actively tanking, I think they're doing a disservice to him, to be quite honest. Like I want a high draft pick totally. But what I want that to look like is, Justin throws a pick at the end of the game versus we're running the ball on first and goal at the 20. That's all I'm asking for. Put it in his hands. Let that high draft pick be in Justin Fields' hands.
Yeah, and I would like to see some adjustments towards personnel, right? Velus, like, what are we doing here? Why is he still not playing? Why is he still not playing? Like
they gave him a rep at running back. They've been listening to the Bear With Us podcast, Jackie.
They have been. So maybe we can't be too harsh because
as they said that fucking redheaded fellow and that bald guy. Maybe this will please him. Get out there and take this carry, fellas. Get -2.
I'm surprised they didn't call you up and ask you to play corner for them because maybe
close.
They knew something though.
I was doing push-ups in the living room. Push-ups in the living room to get ready.
You're like, I gotta go, kid. Frank, happy birthday to your son, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, 3 years old. That's wild because that's
I know
as old as this podcast. So
yep.
But we appreciate you guys listening as always. We will obviously be back for our normal podcast time. No reaction pod next week as the Bears will be on a bye week. So Frank and I will figure out something to talk about, I guess. Bye week in week 14. Just fucking dumb, in my opinion. But that will do it for this episode. Bears lose 28-19 to the Packers. Aaron Rodgers still owns this town, Frank, and that just makes me sick. But no, we appreciate you guys listening. Frank, I'll talk to you in a couple days.
Yes. Later, Jackie. Later, everybody.